Social distancing and health protocols seemingly went out the window in this food distribution project in Old Balara, Quezon City. That was yesterday.
And it turns out the sponsor of the event is a city councilor who is now facing a show cause order for breach of protocols. Good evening, I'm Gretchen Hall.
And I'm Robbie Alampay. You're watching The Big Story. Let's start with that food drive in Quezon City gone wrong as thousands gathered, including outsiders.
The local government has already issued a show cause order against the councilor who sponsored the event for alleged health protocol violations. JC Cosico has the big story.
Maraming salamat po sa inyo sa kabila ng napakalakas na ulan. Hindi po tayo natinag.
In Old Balara, Quezon City, thousands of residents are in long queues stretching across the street. It was a food distribution activity organized by Councilor Franz Pumaren. There was no physical distancing. Some people can be seen not wearing their face masks and shields properly.
Talagang dinagsa po. Pumila na rin ako.
Okay.
Sayang din kasi yung bigas na makukuha namin.
Officials said the activity was meant to be exclusive for residents, but a resident claimed they were outnumbered by outsiders. The officials estimated headcount 6,000. In fact, Barangay Officer Alan Faranza said they were only informed of the event on the day itself.
Ang pag-aakala namin na doon lang sa particular na area lang magkakaroon ng bigayan at limited lang yung taong papipilahin. Kinagulat po namin na 6,000 po pala yung pumila doon.
Mayor Joy Belmontes issued a show cause order against Pumaren for alleged health protocol violations in the event he sponsored. Belmontes said the move is consistent with their policy of going after protocol violators, regardless of their status or position. The QCLGU urged attendees to self-monitor and vowed to test them all. In his defense, Pumaren said beneficiaries were orderly until it rained.
Yung anong lumalabas na video, that's not the whole picture Ang nangyari dito, yun nga nung umulan, hindi naman natin ine-expect yun. Act of God po yung ulan na yun, so doon nagkagulo.
The councilor also called the incident an isolated case. But is it? Over in Los Baños, Laguna, thousands have also swarmed into a gymnasium to get their 1,000 peso cash subsidy. To make things worse, they receive only about 400 each.
Naghintay po kami hanggang alas 5.
Los Baños Mayor Antonio Calao explained the 7 million pesos they disbursed were only excess funds from previous tranches. Calao said each barangay has a schedule and some residents who failed to receive aid in previous distributions tried their chances. While everybody should receive aid, Municipal Administrator Robert Lavina said it depended on the remaining funds.
For those households or individuals or families na hindi nakatanggap doon sa first 3 priorities ay makakatanggap, subalit depende po yon sa kung magkano yung natira.
The Interior Department is set to investigate both incidents in Quezon City and Los Baños. For News 5, JC Cosico, we are One News.
Where does the Social Welfare Department stand on these cash and distribution issues? Joining us tonight on the line is DSWD spokesperson, Director Irene Dumlao. Good evening, Director Dumlao.
Hi, good evening, Sir Roby.
Ma'am, how can we avoid things like this? We anticipate, kagaya nga po ng sabi sa report, this is not going to be the only incident. In fact, we've reported on 2 similar incidences. How can we avoid things like this?
Well, as member of the Joint Monitoring and Inspection Committee, the DSWD coordinates with the Department of Interior and Local Government and the Department of National Defense, and likewise with the local government units, to ensure that the conduct of the payouts are conducted efficiently, effectively, and of course that it conforms with the minimum health protocols. Patuloy naman po yung pagpapaalala natin sa mga local government units and of course to our beneficiaries to observe yung pong social distancing and to always wear their face masks and face shields during the conduct of the payout activities. Likewise, we also coordinate with the local government units to ensure nga po that the necessary and appropriate protocols are observed. With respect to the distribution of the assistance, we would like to reiterate that based on the local budget circular number 136 and the joint memorandum circular number 1 issued by DILG, DND, and DSWD, it is very clear that 1,000 pesos po yung dapat matanggap ng isang individual or each member of the family, and the amount that should be received by each family should not exceed 4,000 pesos. So ito po yung patuloy nating ipinapaalala sa mga local government units and of course our beneficiaries, so that we could really ensure na maayos po yung mga isinasagawang mga payouts.
Samantala po, Bayanihan 3 deliberations still ongoing, and then on top of that, some of the LGUs are saying this is still leftover funds na hindi pa namin na-distribute. Are we anticipating between those two developments na marami pa po at dadami pa po itong mga cash distribution projects?
Well, Sir Roby, as of today, the report that we got from the Department of Interior and Local Government, 22.8 or more than 22.8 billion pesos have already been dispersed out of the 22.9 allocated for the emergency or the ECQ ayuda or the financial assistance in the NCR Plus. Also, based on the joint memorandum circular number 1 as amended, kahapon po kasi yung deadline ng pamamahagi nga po ng ECQ ayuda. So, if you could recall, dapat po yan May 15, but because there were some beneficiaries who did not claim their aid, ay binigyan po natin ng additional 10 days yung mga local government units to identify other beneficiaries, other individuals who are also affected by the imposition of the ECQ. And yun nga po yung ginawa ng local government units ng supplemental list. And they were given 10 days, as I've earlier mentioned, to distribute it. And it was yesterday. It was yesterday nga po yung last day ng pamamahagi ng ayuda. So, based on the data or the statistics that I've earlier stated, nakita naman po natin na halos kompleto na itong ECQ ayuda distribution.
Okay, maraming salamat po. That was DSWD spokesperson Director Irene Dumlao. The third installment of the Bayanihan Bill is one step closer to final approval at the lower house. Tonight's big number is the budget for the stimulus package, 401 billion pesos. The approved version on second reading is slightly lower than the initial 405 billion peso Bayanihan 3 proposal. Cash assistance for Filipinos across all social status is still kept at 1,000 pesos each to be given in 2 tranches. The total allocation for the cash aid distribution is at 216 billion pesos.
These are the other big stories tonight. The suspect in the vaccine slot for sale scheme turns himself in to authorities, but he continues to deny the allegations. The downtrend in cases continues according to the Octa Research Group, but they also noted that easing of restrictions must be done gradually. And it's the end of an era. PBA legend Mark Pingris announces his retirement after a colorful career of 16 years. These big stories after the break.
Good evening, I'm Robbie Alampay. You're still watching The Big Story. The suspect in the alleged illegal selling of COVID-19 vaccination slots has voluntarily turned himself in, but he is denying taking any part in any scam. Pat Pangune has this report.
Case closed. This is what Mandaluyong LGU said about their investigation into the vaccine slot for sale modus after the suspect surrendered to authorities earlier today. 25-year-old suspect Kyle Cedric Bonifacio turned himself in to MMDA Chairman Benhur Abalos and Mandaluyong Mayor Menchi Abalos. The Mandaluyong Police and CIDG were able to track down his name and address based on leads from chat conversations with his former college classmate who later reported him.
Nag-trending sa social media ang certain parang selling of ganito vaccine and slots of vaccination within the area of Mandaluyong. Unlike not only Mandaluyong pero meron pa tayong ibang areas. And aside from that, we exploited the social media. Lumutang na talaga yung pangalan niya. Lumutang na po si Mr. Bonifacio and other personalities na nandun. Kaya doon namin mas madali namin natumbok yung
His father, a barangay councilor of the city, convinced him to surrender and face the consequences of his actions.
Nung gabi, tumawag sa akin yung father, nagsabi siya sa akin na, "Ma'am, anak ko po yung hinahanap nyo." Sabi niya, "Ma'am, pupunta ako sa inyo, isusurrender ko yung anak ko sa iyo."
Despite his surrender, Bonifacio maintained his innocence, saying he hasn't sold any vaccine slot, nor is he connected to the LGU. He also denied his father was involved in any of the accusations against him.
Hindi po ako talaga nagbenta. At yung resibo po na yun ay kusang bigay po sa akin nung taong yun. Ako lamang po ang involved dito at wala ng ibang tao.
The Mandaluyong Police has already turned him over to the custody of the PNP CIDG for further questioning. The MMDA has warned of stiff penalties for anyone found guilty of selling their vaccination slots, stressing its negative implication on the government's vaccination drive. Bonifacio may face charges of estafa, direct bribery, and for violation of the Bayanihan Act for taking advantage of the pandemic. Meanwhile, the Metro Manila Mayor's Council is considering enacting a unified ordinance against the sale of COVID-19 vaccines.
Meron tayong legislation na po dyan sa national, katulad po yung po mga individual na mga scrupulous, pwede po nating demanda ng estafa yun eh.
For News 5, Patricia Mangune. We are One News.
Government is set to conduct trials on the efficacy of mixed vaccine doses next month. Officials are seeing it as a possible answer to the limited vaccine supply in the country. Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro gives us a front seat to that story.
Ano yung ginagawa nyo? Ano yung ginagawa
The country has two kinds of problems with COVID vaccines: not having enough or not having enough of a particular brand.
200 doses lang tapos listahan sila ng ang dami-dami. Kawawa naman yung mga tao.
Next month, the government begins trials on mixing and matching different COVID vaccines to meet the growing demands for the jabs.
Ang layunin ng pag-aaral na ito ay suriin ang kaligtasan ng paggamit at ang immune response ng mga individual na bibigyan ng magkaibang vaccine brands para sa first at second dose.
People are supposed to get 2 doses of the same brand, but because of supply issues, even other countries see the need to mix and match. It's called heterologous prime boosting, and it has been successfully done with other vaccines like polio.
Ang polio vaccine, mayroong oral polio na live attenuated at mayroong inactivated. You can actually give palit-palit yan.
Experts say if correctly done, a vaccine mix and match may even boost the efficacy of the vaccines and give broader protection against COVID. In Spain, for example, initial test mixing of Pfizer's mRNA vaccine with AstraZeneca's adenovirus vaccine gave test participants much more antibodies than if they just received one vaccine brand.
Actually, most of the immunologists will tell you that nababroaden ang word nila ay nababroaden yung immune response.
The Department of Science and Technology will likely mix other vaccine brands with Sinovac, which makes up the bulk of our vaccine supply. The study begins next month with 3,000 participants and is expected to last a year and a half. Interim findings may be made within the first 3 months and be the basis for the government's vaccine mix and match policy.
We are optimistic, let us say, no, na this will yield good results for us. para rin makatulong sa ating deployment.
I'm Jacob Lazaro, and we are One News.
The Okta research team is seeing a continuous downtrend in COVID-19 cases in NCR. The think tank noted that average daily cases in the capital region has gone down to a little over 1,000. Reproduction number, which determines the rate of virus transmission, has also eased to 0.53. More than 1 million Filipinos have also been fully vaccinated against COVID-19 since the rollout in March. Despite this, Okta is still cautioning against easing restrictions further in the NCR Plus bubble. The group believes it may be best to keep the general community quarantine status for 2 more weeks.
Time for an express look at some of the day's big stories. It's day 1 of Iloilo City's border lockdown as the number of COVID cases in the city continue to rise. About 300 police officers are manning the 9 entry and exit points of the city, and travelers will have to present IDs and travel documents proving they are essential workers. Those who can't show required documents will not be allowed to enter the city. A student pilot died after the aircraft he was manning crashed off Caba in La Union this morning. The 25-year-old was reportedly conducting a solo cross-country flight. And according to the flight plan, he flew the aircraft from the Iba Airport in Zambales and was supposed to go to the La Union and Lingayen airports before returning to Iba. The Civil Aviation Authority and the National Police's Aviation Security Group are investigating the incident. A witness in the police killing of an 18-year-old with special needs meets with PNP Chief General Guillermo Eleazar to give his affidavit. He says during the scuffle with police, Edwin Anrigo, who has autism, did not fight back, nor did he try to take the police officer's service weapon. This is in contrast to police narrative. The witness adds that Anrigo was shot on his side and undressed and may have already been dead before being dragged to the police car. And now for the big story in sports. Magnolia Hotshots big man Mark Fingers has called it a career after 16 years in the PBA. The 39-year-old forward, dubbed Pinoy Sakuragi, announced his retirement on Instagram Tuesday night. The 6'4" forward helped Pure Foods win 7 titles, including a Grand Slam in 2014. Pingres also had a storied campaign for the national team, being the heart and soul of Gilas Pilipinas. Time for another quick break. More big stories when we return. Keep it here on One News.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay. Restaurant owners are proposing a Bakuna Patch or a vaccine pass system for senior citizens who have already been inoculated against COVID-19. Faith Del Mundo with the details.
To 70-year-old Imelda Baruela, going out to eat at restaurants and watching films is what she misses the most from pre-pandemic times. Lola Imelda says the last time she went outside her home was in February 2020, when she celebrated her birthday before the pandemic struck.
So yun po yung huli niyo pong kain?
Oo, nilabas ako anak ko.
Tapos hindi na po na ulit-ulit.
Pakiramdam namin, noong time na yon, talagang masigla kami. Malakas ang mga katawan namin. Dahil na-enjoy namin yung buhay namin na bilang isang senior.
Lola Imelda has now been fully vaccinated against COVID-19, but she says she only feels weaker the more she stays inside the house.
Para yatang nanghihina na tayo dahil kasi hindi na tayo makalabas, hindi na tayo na anuhan ng hangin. Sabi kong gano'n, hindi na nakakapag-exercise. Yun, gano'n. Talagang nakakabagot na.
But senior citizens like her may just have to wait for just a little longer before they get to enjoy the outdoors again. Restaurant owners are proposing a vaccine pass system or the use of QR codes for inoculated senior citizens. The restaurant industry is among the hardest hit by the pandemic. They hope that the Bakuna Batch will not only encourage more people to dine in, but also allow them to increase their operational capacity.
Our first goal is to bring out the vaccinated senior citizens. They're fully vaccinated, but still they're still not allowed to go to restaurants. They're allowed to travel, but they're not allowed to go to restaurants. They're allowed to go to hardware stores, but not to restaurants. So what we're hoping is that if government limits us to 20%, to grant us another 20% for the vaccinated, because they found that vaccinated people have minimal risk of contracting the virus or passing on the virus. We're hopeful that the DOH can adopt this finding.
For Senator Cynthia Villar, it's ironic that senior citizens are still not allowed to go out after they heeded out calls to get vaccinated. But Senator Nancy Binay warned senior citizens who receive shots could still be COVID-19 spreaders.
Kaya sila pinapabakunahan kasi sila ho yung pwedeng mamatay when they get the virus. Yung senior citizen can be a spreader. Kasi nga, yung vaccine can only protect yung nabakunahan from severe.
Meanwhile, Teng clarified that the Bakuna Batch is non-discriminatory.
We're not excluding customers from coming into our restaurant, whether they're vaccinated or not. But for now, the 65-year-old are discriminated against because they're not allowed.
Teng also called on the government for tax holidays and earlier announcement of community quarantine rules. For News 5, Faith Del Mundo, we are One News.
Let's take a look at the biggest stories on print and online. From Philippine Star, the Senate is being urged to investigate reports of unfair work conditions suffered by delivery riders, ride-hailing drivers, and other freelancers. Senator Risa Hontiveros said the Labor Department received hundreds of complaints from delivery riders after mobile app operators treated them as freelancers. Hontiveros noted the rising demand for part-time workers, who she says are often exploited and left without basic work benefits. The Insurance Commission agrees insurance availment in the Philippines remains low, although rising year on year. The agency told Business World Live earlier today that the insurance penetration rate in the country is somewhere less than 2%, relatively low compared to other countries. The lower house passed on Tuesday the measure regulating the use of electronic cigarettes and vape products. The bill allows people aged 18 years old and above to buy such products, lower than the previous age limit of 21 years old. News 5 reports that Kabataan Party List opposed the measure and is instead pushing to raise the age limit to 25 years old.
In world news, the U.S. is marking year one since the killing of George Floyd by a police officer, which sparked protests against racism worldwide. U.S. President Joe Biden missed his self-imposed deadline to pass a police reform bill in time for Floyd's first death anniversary. And yet Biden says he remains hopeful that an agreement will be reached on a legislation that would seek to restrict chokeholds by police while making it easier to hold officers liable in court. Meanwhile, shots were fired and at least one person was wounded near the site of Floyd's murder, as protesters across the U.S. held memorial events and marches honoring the life of Floyd.
Another big story in sports. The Gilas Pilipinas 3-on-3 team has begun their campaign in the FIBA 3-on-3 Olympic qualifying tournament in Graz, Austria. Gilas is currently playing against Qatar before taking on powerhouse Slovenia at 9:55 p.m. They recently implemented a lineup change ahead of their first game, as Santi Santillan will be the fourth member of the squad. He will be joining Joshua Munzon, CJ Perez, and Mawala Tautua. The Samahang Basketball ng Pilipinas said that Alvin Pasaol was not yet in game shape following his late entry to the training bubble earlier in the month. For Jordan Clarkson, his NBA Sixth Man of the Year award in this 2021 season is his homage to those who won the honor before him. Clarkson said he feels lucky to have picked the brain of former Sixth Man of the Year awardees in Lou Williams and J.R. Smith, both of whom have been his teammate. Clarkson said his education also came from other former winners like Manu Ginobili and Jamal Crawford, influencing him to become the player that he is now. But despite winning the award, Clarkson said that he knows the Jazz still has something bigger in mind.
It's definitely an amazing achievement and something that I'm gonna embrace today. Like you said, I'm gonna live in the moment, but I know we got bigger things ahead, and I want to get something else done and bring a gold ball home for sure.
The launching of Kapatid Network's latest talent show, Pop Pinoy, was on fire. Headhunters Maha Salvador, JR, Kayla Rivera, and DJ Luño ignited the dance floor with their numbers. Pop Pinoy aims to discover new homegrown talents and send them to the global stage. The phenomenal star Maine Mendoza will be the host. Maine was ecstatic, especially that there have been lots of calls for her to have a project with TV5 since last year. And now, it has finally come true, thanks to Signal, TV5, Archangel Media, and TNT.
Prepare ko lang talaga yung sarili ko mentally kasi ibang environment to. Hopefully, magkaroon ng friendships with the head.
Maine will host Pop Pinoy alongside the Transformation King, Paulo Ballesteros. This is Paulo's second project with TV5 after Bawal na Game Show. As for DJ Luño, this is his first major television gig, following a couple of guest appearances in several shows, including Lunch Out Loud. He hopes that the major project can help him save face following a string of controversies.
Siyempre, the more na tinataas tayo ni God, the more na mas nagiging responsable tayo sa mga ginagawa natin.
Catch the primer on June 6 at 8 p.m. Grand premiere will be on June 13 at 7 p.m. on TV5. Catch-up airings in high definition will be on Colors at 9:30 p.m. on Signal. For News 5, MJ Marfori, we are One News.
And speaking of the Kapatid Network, TV5 management and ABC5 employees have formally signed a memorandum of agreement in a bid to improve labor conditions in the network. The collective bargaining agreement was a result of 3 months of negotiations. The camps agreed to, among other things, improving benefits of TV5 employees and raising their wages, medical and hospitalization benefits, and gender responsiveness benefits. They say, stay in your lane, boy. The 21 Pilots song goes. Well, the lyrics befit this Facebook video gone viral for the wrong reasons. Here, we can see a motorist stuck in a bumper-to-bumper jam along EDSA Balitawak after he used the bus lane. EDSA's left-mode lanes, of course, are obviously just for buses. The uploader poked fun at the motorist who, he said, will only make it out the next day. The MMDA did slap the unlucky motorist with a 1,000 peso fine.
Ang talino mo, ang haba niya, no?
Aray ko, ang
my
sakit.
God.
Baka naman nagkamali. Ako,
Oo.
gusto kong matawa, pero sa totoo lang, when you're driving down EDSA, kapraningan mo yun eh, di ba? Magkamali ka ng pasok, isang mali lang. Ako.
Minsan nagzo-zone out ka kasi habang nagda-drive eh. Tapos, meron ako mga kilala na pumasok na doon, pero hindi ko pinost.
Oo, wag na natin pangalanan. Wag mo na itag.
Well, lesson learned for all of us. Oh, speaking of which, please do catch the current game of Gilas Pilipinas 3-on-3 on the SBP Facebook page happening right now. Pilipinas versus Qatar. Supportahan po natin ang ating mga koponan. That wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News, for more in-depth analysis. Visit our webpage, onenews.ph. mask on.
Wash hands.
And stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Hall. We are One News. Have a good evening.